The absolute value is the distance from 0. So the absolute value of 2 is 2. If we think about 2 on a number line, 2 is 2 away from 0. If we have the absolute value of negative 2, well, negative 2 is also 2 away from 0. Distance is always measured in positive units, so whether we have 2 or negative 2, the absolute value, the distance away from 0, will be 2. So if we look at an absolute value equation, we're going to have a problem that looks like this. If we have the absolute value of x equaling 2, we have a couple choices for x. If we want our answer to be 2, x could be 2, or x could also be negative 2. To solve an absolute value equation, we're going to always have two answers. If you think of it this way, whatever inside the absolute value symbols can either be positive or negative, and we're going to end up with two different answers. So x could be 2 and get an answer of 2, or negative 2 to get an answer of 2. If we have a problem that looks like this, the absolute value of x equals negative 2, well, in this case, no matter what we plug in for x, we're never going to get a negative answer when dealing with the absolute value. So the absolute value of x equaling negative 2 has no solutions. If we expand this idea a little bit, we can answer problem number 1. In problem number 1, we have the absolute value of this whole quantity, 2x plus 1. And we want to take the absolute value of this entire quantity and get an answer of 11. We can do that a couple different ways. If this entire thing, 2x plus 1, equals 11, then when we take the absolute value of 11, we're going to get an answer of 11. Or we can set this entire quantity equal to negative 11, and then what's inside the absolute value symbol would be negative 11, and the absolute value of negative 11 is 11. So we are going to get two different choices here. One where the quantity equals 11, and the other one where the quantity equals negative 11. You can also think of it this way. In order to undo the order of operations, in order to undo the absolute value, we have to set up two different equations. One where we have a positive answer and one where we have a negative answer. Because either way, when we plug it back in, the absolute value of a positive or a negative number will be 11. At this point, we have two linear equations, and we can just solve for x directly. So I have two choices. X could be 5, or x could be negative 6. If I plug 5 back in, 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11. So 5 gives me this answer of 11, and when I take the absolute value of 11, I get 11. If I plug negative 6 in for x, I'm going to have 2 times negative 6, which is negative 12, plus 1 gives me negative 11. And when I take the absolute value of negative 11, I get my other answer or I get the answer 11. So my other answer is x equals -6. Whenever you see an absolute value equation, you should always get two answers. In problem number 2, we need to undo the order of operations. So before we can set up our two different equations, we want to get rid of this plus 7 and get rid of this times 3. To get rid of the plus 7, subtract 7 from both sides of the equal sign. Now to get rid of this 3 times, I don't want to distribute. I want to get rid of this 3 by multiplying both sides by the inverse. Only now can I set up my two different equations. Before I can get rid of this absolute value symbols, I need to get rid of the plus 7 and the 3 times. At this point, I want to set up my two different equations. I have x minus 4 inside of my absolute value. So my two choices are x minus 4 equals 5, or x minus 4 could be -5. Either way, the absolute value will give me this positive 5 answer. Solve each linear equation to get both answers. So again, I get two answers, x equals 9 or x equals -1, which makes sense. If I plug 9 back in, 9 minus 4 is 5. The absolute value of 5 is 5. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 7 gives me 22. Or if I plug -1 in, -1 minus 4 is -5. The absolute value of -5 is positive 5. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 7 gives me 22. Think of the absolute value as a grouping symbol. To get rid of the grouping symbol, you have to set up two equations. Before we can set up our two equations, we need to get rid of the stuff around the grouping symbol first.